Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Salt and Light podcast. First of all, I would like to thank you all for all the love and all the shares and all the views for only the trailer, and we're only starting. So thank you very much for the support you're giving us, and it gives us a lot of strength to continue and to hustle with all the setup and all the talk and all the research. So thank you very much. In the first episode, I want to introduce Joy. Tell us a bit of who you are, and tell us also why you picked this topic. I know that we asked you, and we're going to always ask our guest to pick the topic. Give us a bit like why you picked this topic.
Okay, first, I'm Joy. I'm someone who loves psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, anything that requires understanding of the human being or, sociology. So the topic we took today was about forgiveness. And I took forgiveness because I think it's such an important topic in which Christians have to face every single day in their lives. And I think whenever the sin or issue you're facing in your life, forgiveness is such an important aspect to learn how to deal with, because it changes your heart. And it's something I've dealt with for 3-4 years. It's something that I've almost made a research on, even for me personally. And because I've mentioned I like psychology, I was so invested to understand how the people who've hurt me, or the people I've dealt with, or the people who've hurt the people I love are dealing. That's why I got into psychology. And I got into this idea of forgiveness. So yeah.
So I love the way you've set up the whole context of it started also always with someone that hurt you.
Yes.
I know that it could actually be, it could affect you a lot.
Yes.
So I know that there's a technical word for that, and it's trauma.
Yeah.
I know that you have a lot of background in
Yes.
that. Would you give us a bit of your understanding of what is a trauma?
Okay, well, first you have to understand that trauma, it is very subjective, but it's really personalized, depends on who you are. By meaning that trauma is not based on the event, but how you perceive the event, so perception, and that causes a trauma. And physiologically speaking, it's usually a change in your brain. So it's really based on you, not on the event. So that's something to take in consideration in order to validate everyone's emotions and everyone's experiences.
It is so true, because when I was researching on it, and trauma was always something that I assumed, I always assumed PTSD, ASD, it's always something that I would never be in it. And then when I got through it and I read, and I think for example, the trauma-informed care, it's a book called Trauma-Informed Care that I found in the National Library of Medicine. And it tells you that there's 5 different responses. There's the physical one. So you could always feel it biologically. You could also have unregulated emotion. You could feel, what else? It is altered knowledge of the world. It could affect you also in your habits and also the relationship, and that's obvious. But every single one, and that's what I was reading, is every single one of them has a different response and a different way to tackle. You could have a trauma could make you react with a lot of or not enough of.
Absolutely.
Right? There's an up and low. And that's one of the things that we find. I personally, sometimes when I recalled most of the trauma that I went through, there's some that when it really affected me, for a guy that speaks a lot, and for people that know me, I speak a lot. Okay. I didn't speak. There's one trauma I remember, and it took me 2 days for me to even speak to my family, and it has nothing to do with my family. It was a relationship that went really sour, but it was my first time that I
dealt with trauma.
No, not even that. I dealt with cheating, and I was like, that is cheat, and I'm like, how could someone do that? And I was speechless for 2 days, and then on the third one, I was like, I had to go through it. Is there because I heard you talking about something you've been dealing with in the last 3 years, because I've been dealing with a lot too, but Is there one that was like life changing? Because I feel like it changed your life. It changed your perspective on how you see things now. And that's why you picked forgiveness.
Yes, yes. I think first and foremost, I want to mention that as a child, I had never an issue with forgiveness. I was the type of person who would never set boundaries and forgive on and off. Always, always. The problem is, I think as you grow up, you experience more pain, more experiences that makes you go so down, and you come to that conclusion that you are done with people, or you're done with certain experiences, or done with certain pain. And I went to high school, and I think pain is subjective also, but as I mentioned, trauma is subjective. It's really about you. So there's a part of me, I think I was hurt because I had unmet expectations from people. And I think it's something very common amongst like most people. And because of that issue, I got hurt. Now that I think out of this event, I'm taking acknowledgement that I got hurt, because I think pain is also, you have to take responsibility of this. Nothing can hurt you beyond your will. And you have to take acknowledge of that certain extent. Certain extent, also because we are humans, right?
Yes.
So I went through that event. I met some people. They've let me down. I had unmet expectations. And I think it triggered something in me as a child. And back then when I was like beginning of my teens. So at first I got hurt. But I think after I got hurt, my ego shattered. Because your sense of self, you can't imagine people hurting you that way. Like, especially if it's something public in front of people, or in front of your friend group or family, or whatever type of pain. Anything that requires ego triggers you so bad. It shatters you.
You make me laugh, because the more public it is, the more hurt you feel, and the more like and the harder it's gonna get. And when we're gonna get to forgiveness, it's gonna be harder and harder depending on how hurt you got in the beginning. But I love how you were very conscious, or now you're conscious of your surrounding and how people are affecting you. And it's something that I've been having an issue dealing with, is how people are supporting me. How do you feel that? How do you feel you're supported? And what is your support system looks like?
My support system. First, of course, my family. Of course, especially my mom. Secondly, friends for a very long time wasn't really support till I came and I healed myself. And after I healed myself, God started to send me the right people in my life, the right friends. After he made sure I wasn't dependent on people, he sent me the right people.
Yes.
So at first, like, my issue was with friends my entire life. It's just after that I started doing the healing, I started praying, I started knowing what I actually wanted from friendship and give it to myself and to heal what I had to heal. And God was like, okay, you've done your part. Now you're not controlled by external factors. Now is the right time to send you the right friends. And that's the time I had the right support. But my support was my family, of course, my friends later on. But when I was my lowest, it was God, my family, perception. Changing my perception was the most important factor for me. So, changing perception.
I love the fact that the first thing that you've mentioned when you enumerated your support system, you started with God. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you show, even when you were explaining the trauma you went through, you're explaining how pain has a purpose.
Yes.
You went through that pain for the sole reason to learn how to have friends. And from there, now
have my whole purpose figured out. Honestly,
and
have so much to talk about.
that's what I love, because when you go, because I had an issue with, like, I have that victimized feeling in the beginning.
Everyone has a certain point.
It's like, why me? I've always done the right thing.
Absolutely.
God, why are you doing this to me? And you're just like, I've been always doing the right thing. Why are you doing this? And do you remember Morgan Freeman in this movie? I can't remember which movie, but he acts like God. And then there's this person that asked him, why is God making me go through this? And he goes like, so I'm just gonna paraphrase. He told her, if you're asking God for patience, he's gonna give you opportunities to learn what is patient.
Absolutely.
Or to be patient.
Absolutely, 100%. I know what you're saying. I watched what you're talking about. I did watch it. And I think I've posted so many times, reposted that video so many times on my story. I think my friends got bored of me. Like, I just kept posting
I have friends who are like, are you okay, bro? Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm good.
But yeah, no, absolutely. If you're asking me about the purpose of my pain, the thing is, again, I'm repeating that I think you have to take acknowledgement of your pain because it's all about perception, and that's what things I've done. But I don't think like my trauma was only those events. It was multitude of events, but my most changing life like event was the one I was talking about at school. And I think that's when I found my purpose. How? Because my biggest issue as a child and as a teen was first to feeling misunderstood, to feeling unheard, to feel like you are just completely separated from most people. At first, as a child, I used to be terrified of being alone. However, as I grew up, I understand that my purpose and my strength was in those types of things. How? Well, first, my entire life was scared to being alone because I saw it as a bad thing. However, I learned that when you're alone, God isolates you, He prepares you, He teaches you. And when I felt misunderstood, it's because I was meant to understand people. When I didn't feel like I was myself being like completely alone, it's because I was meant to help people to not feel alone and to understand them, to be myself. Being alone made me strong. It made me with myself, made me find my identity, it made me find my purpose. It helped me even to pursue art, to music, to writing, to psychology, to a multitude of stuff. And the people I've dealt with, such as toxic people who've let me down, taught me how to depend on myself or on God. But they've also taught me that they are the reason I got into loving psychology, because those people intrigued me so much to the point I wanted to take a book, read about it, learn more about the subject, to understand people, to the point that's something I'm actually want to pursue later on. Like, through those experiences, I've learned what's my purpose. So I find it so peaceful to understand that every pain I had to deal with had a purpose. Even now, had a purpose.
But I love the fact that you said that you had to go through the pain to understand your purpose.
Yes.
I've been in the other side of it where you're like just gloomy and be like and whiny about it. But to understand that God makes you go through this tribulation, to understand that He is not creating the pain, but because of maybe our bad choices, the environment around you, because you've accepted the environment around you, and now you're in it, and He knows that you're able to go from it and to learn more. He's taking this moment as an opportunity to be like, you're there, it's okay, let's use it. There's this verse, when I read it, I was like, it just shows you that God has common sense.
Absolutely.
He's not out of this world. Like, I love when they say His nature is love, but He's also just. And you're like, how?
It's very controversial.
You think that, but God
not.
always makes sense at the end of the day. And this verse, it's 2 Corinthians 1st chapter, verse 3 and 4. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. So it just makes sense. You are in trouble. You are learning, and that's the journey of life. You're learning, and you're going through a lot of things, and you use that knowledge to help others next to you. And this is maybe a good way to ask you: Does forgiveness get rid of that pain? So you've went through that pain, and I know, like, I feel, because I'm also thinking about the pain I went through.
Yes.
And do you think that you got rid of that pain because you forgave?
Two things. First, you have to define what's forgiveness, because that's the most controversial aspect that I stayed years trying to figure out.
Okay.
Because as I said, as a child, I thought that forgiveness meant this person said I'm sorry, or they don't say sorry, and you bring them back to your life. I thought that if you loved someone, you could never let them go. That's an ideology that I had, and it's been told, and it's not true. You could love someone and still let them go. You could still love them, and loving someone, your family member, your friends, your brother or sister, doesn't mean that you cut them off. No. That means loving, first of all, it's a commitment, it's a choice. It's not a feeling. So if you're basing yourself on feelings, that's not real love. So that's commitment and caring. Once you care about someone, you can never uncare. You can never uncare. It's if you actually care. If, like, for example, my little brother who's 6 years old, I always care about him. Whenever the situation, we fight, we scream, we cry, we don't care. I still care about him. If I'm traveling, if my school is in Terrebonne, I don't care. I care about him. Whenever the situation, I feel care about him, and I will continue to care.
Let me challenge you on something. So you said that forgiveness is understanding that letting go of that person
Sometimes
could help. Like, it is the way. So, like, sometimes it's not always the purpose, but there's always different ways to forgive someone. Let me ask you this: if this person is this kind of close of a family member or a friend that is now a part of you.
Yes.
And now that they hurt you in a level where the relationship is affected so much that you cannot come back from it. And yes, you need to let go for you to be okay.
Yes.
Would you still do it? Would you still go through the forgiveness?
First, I think that, of course, that wounded, because I'm very wounded because of a family member, let's say, I think, of course, it takes a lot of healing to accept that. But first, I would acknowledge the feeling. I feel that way. Secondly, of course, I would have this mature conversation with the person, my family member. Hey, I did not like how this went. I felt this way, that way. And sometimes you cannot always try to wait for approval from this person, because not everyone has the emotional maturity to accept what they did to you.
100%.
So you'd be like, well, that happened. You'd be like, well, it's not my fault. I did not do that. I did not say that. This is past.
You misunderstood.
Why you're overreacting, you're oversensitive, all those labels, right? The thing is, I think as a Christian, and if I want to be the best version of myself, psychologically speaking, and spiritually, I have to go through the healing. Go through the healing takes time, takes years. Forgiving someone doesn't go like in 2 days, it takes years. And sometimes in order to forgive, you have to first go to the wound, heal yourself, deal with that, accept the fact, and after that, maybe try to return emotionally.
You are saying perfectly, and it actually summarizes. I went to check and I was like, who could tell me the best way how to forgive? And I found that Harvard Medical School has a method called REACH. So first step is recall the wrongdoing without any negative thought.
Yes.
So you go through that pain and you understand what went wrong, empathize with and understanding the other person.
Absolutely.
And obviously they're not going to always have that maturity to tell you,
cannot expect that.
I am right. There's one of the worst, I think my traumas are in relationships, and I don't know why.
It's okay. It happens.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Like it's
okay.
I had to go through that, and we're going to continue it. I had to go through that on my own, even though I had a support system and my friends were that support system. But she was only able to even talk to me 2 years later. So imagine if I couldn't go through it and stay stuck for 2 years. It's 2 years. It took me 6 months. It's still you need to go through time. Like,
absolutely.
there is time. There is time
time
allocated to give to yourself.
Sure.
But if I had just waited for her to give me the sweet talk, but she didn't even realize after 2 years what she did wrong. So I and
cannot
the second
acknowledge.
part, this is why I wanted to stop empathizing. When I was sitting in front of her, I did not even think about what she did. I really was thinking, my God, like, I want to help you. And I forgot totally of what she did. And it's not as if I forgot. It's not even important. It's not affecting me anymore.
Yes.
It just, I know what she did. It's not as if I'm going to accept to be with her in a second relationship. But I was just like, man, I know what you're feeling, what you're going through.
It's
you're
wounds.
in pain.
Yes. And you're projecting.
And I understand your action. And that's why it goes and continues. For the in the reach, it's altruistic gift. It's addressing your own shortcoming.
Yes.
And this is something that personally, if it actually helped me with some of my trauma, because I was like, who am I to judge the other person? And I'm like, I've done other stuff.
Yes.
And some stuff are even not known. They're in the dark. And if anyone would think or even know what I've done, they would change their perspective of me.
Absolutely.
So I should be understanding of others.
Yes.
And then commit yourself to forgive, because it needs dedication. It needs discipline
Yes.
to always stay forgiveness. And the fourth for H is hold on to forgiveness.
Yes.
Even though you're committing, you're holding on. And it's something that I understood is that whenever you start to forgive, or any action, it starts with discipline. And
Yes.
then it becomes a habit.
Yes.
So it's just easy because you've trained yourself to do it. Now it's just an easy thing. So now, funny thing, I got another trauma in another relationship,
It
was
It is completely valid. I don't.
so 2 relationships with traumas. On the second time, and that
Yes.
was something that was very surprising. I wasn't that affected, because I jumped into, I understand where she's coming from. I know why you're doing this. And I didn't waste the time be like, oh my God, how could she? And like, it's okay. I felt sad because I got hurt. But it wasn't all whining about, oh my God, how could she? No, I got hurt because I loved her. And then from there, like, okay, I understand why she did this.
Yes.
And it's sad that she had to go through this.
Yes.
And I had to go through this.
Yes, absolutely.
Other than mental health reasons, why would we forgive?
I want to mention something else about forgiveness.
Yeah,
It's
tell
not
me.
only discipline. It is, as you said, first you have to go through the healing, discover who you are. And by discovering who you are so deeply, because there's something, when you understand yourself, you start to understand everything and everyone around you. So that's a very important lesson and thing and stage you have to go through. Sometimes even God will isolate you to go through that season. Isolation, discover who you are, and then understand everyone. And by understanding everyone, you start to separate their behavior from who they are, which is a very important aspect, because by separating their identity from their behavior, they're no longer one, they're two things. They've done a bad thing, they're not bad people. So by doing that, you start to feel less angry towards them, but more angry towards their behavior. And you start to understand that behavior. So you start to I feel empathy towards them, as you said. And something else, I think the best thing for forgiveness, it's discipline, but more specifically through the action of giving. I think the best way to forgive,
Yes, thank you.
it's to try to transform that hatred into a positive thing. How? Positive actions, even if you don't feel it. Like those people that I've dealt with, what I start doing first, if I see them, not extremely have to say hi, but being kind, smile. Secondly, they need help, I'll be here. They cried, even though you're not my friend. You're not my life. However, I'll come and hear you if you need it, and then leave.
But
Even though you're not committed emotionally to you.
it is hard, even
Takes a lot of strength.
though I was empathetic with the second girl.
Yes.
Her presence itself,
Triggered you.
yeah, and especially certain things, certain actions,
Yes.
made me go crazy. So how could you put both? As much as I love that you're just only 16 and all that, but you know,
How? How did-
just how is this possible from just going
pain from pain?
no, yeah, like from separating your pain
Yes.
with the good action. How could you put those two in the same place?
Okay. Those people that I've dealt with, my hardest thing that I had to see them every single day, and they were a group that people who were having, I felt humiliated for 3 years every single day.
Yeah, I know.
And that was in the first year of my high school. After I felt this way, I forced myself. I said to my parents, I'm going to put myself in this dance class, which they are there, the whole group, every single day for 2 hours.
You chose to go into.
I forced, my parents were like, why? And why are you doing that? Such a waste of time. I was horrible at dance. However, I put in mind that I'm not going to let anything outside of myself gonna control me that way. I don't care who you are. I will go to that place. I forced myself for 2 years, every single day, 2 hours in front of them, completely alone, knowing they're going to talk about me, and I not respond for 2 years. And I forced myself. I know my nervous system was completely on fire.
On fire, you say?
Yes.
I am on fire for you.
But and the worst thing, I felt humiliated, and I never took revenge. I never did anything. I did not, like, they did what he did, and I never did anything. Like, I just let myself in, which was very painful because it broke what? Your ego.
Yeah, and that's what
It crashes your ego back. You feel like, who am I, first of all? And like, it just makes you feel so humiliated publicly to certain people. It makes you feel very low.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very painful because I think what makes forgiveness so hard is 3 things. 1, the pain, of course. Secondly, the ego. And maybe thirdly, the fact that you're scared. Why you're scared? Because you're scared that if you forgive, that means you're willing to get this person back, even though emotionally. And by letting them back emotionally, you might get hurt again.
Yes. There's a lot of people that, and that's why they're stuck in their trauma.
Yes.
And they're not able to advance because anything that looks anything close to that action triggers them and just puts them in the awkward position.
Yes.
And they can't do anything, and that's PTSD for a lot of the soldiers. But I also think that I went through PTSD because certain things now, if they're done in a certain way, or if an action has been made or a certain comment has been made, triggers a lot of emotion, and be like, oh my God. And like, until like, you know what? I've done what I needed to do, and it is what it is.
Yes.
And it was a bad moment, and it's in the past. It's not gonna ever happen. And whenever I have control, but sometimes people think to have ego is to have control.
It's to have a sense of self, which is essential for everyone. You cannot go through life, not make perception. You cannot perceive outside your ego. Ego is something psychological. In your unconscious, it's divided in 3, and one of them, it's the ego, is your sense of self. Mm-hmm. You cannot perceive, do actions, or even your behavior. You cannot do anything outside of that. So when it shatters, everything is shattered too. Your people around you, the way you perceive love, the way you perceive yourself, your identity, your hobbies, your place in your environment, everything, even your behavior pattern. So when God shatters that, even though it's so painful, and it humbles us, and sometimes God humbles us before he exalts us, he puts us up. So he teaches us that that's what's like, that's who you are. And with me, God, I will show you my glory. And it's also teaching you, because as I said, it shatters everything, right? So you have to start new, right? Everything that is new, sometimes it's God's purpose. That's where you find sometimes God's purpose.
I'm with you 100%. There's a lot of things that God took away that hurt me so much. But when you get to this habit of understanding God's purpose, or at least understand God's will, you're like, I know why you took this.
There's so much peace. There's so much peace about it.
And I think forgiveness helps you to get to that peace.
Absolutely right.
And just to feel like nothing actually is going to affect me, because I have this understanding of why you did it. Like you said, their behavior. And then I understand why God made me go through this, because now
Yes.
I am this person that is able to talk about it, to go through it, to help
Absolutely.
others. And also I'm conscious of next time I'm not gonna fall into the same issue. I'm not gonna see the same people or get to the
Yes.
wrong relationships. And from there, I'm just closer to God.
Absolutely.
Like, period. I am just
Yes.
closer to Him, and I feel so much better. And then peace comes in,
Absolutely.
and this quiet.
Peaceful, and makes so much sense. Then you experience the actual joy, the actual love, the actual everything. Because everything I think that God's meant for us, it's always found in quietness and in peace. Like from my perspective. So
He never talks in noise, huh? And but you know what? You remember when I told you God is always has always common sense?
yes.
I found there's a lot of verses, but like I'm gonna take the shortest, which is
Sure.
Matthew 6, 14 and 15. He says, "For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses."
Absolutely.
And it just doesn't make it. So usually what we do is like, we're like, oh my God, how could they? And I'm like, I'm hurt and I'm the victim.
That's
And then
perception.
when you are, and that's your perception, because you're stuck in the victim
mentality.
in the victim seat. But then when you understand that, I'm gonna forgive them because I'm also been forgiven about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And this is just the way things are. There's less noise. As a person, you're much calmer of what happens around you. Yes, you're gonna get hurt. I'm never
you
gonna.
you cannot unget hurt. If you're a human, you're gonna get hurt.
Yes, and
I
that's.
don't care what's your mentality. Adapt all the mentalities you want. If you want to be human, you're gonna get hurt by the people you love, at least.
But and hurt is not only by having emotions or cry or stuff like that. Like we said in the beginning, trauma could be with a lot of something, emotion or just reaction,
Or there's nothing.
There's nothing going through. You're just disconnected.
That's association. That's a coping mechanism, actually.
And this is how they go through those traumas or those emotions. You're like, I don't want nothing with it, so I'll just not deal with it.
Yes.
And it's just gonna fester, and then it's gonna kill your personality from inside, and it's just gonna eat from you. And this is not the way that God wants us to be built. If we're gonna have that virus or that crack,
no.
Like I remember this analogy of how they made swords, and if there's a tiniest of cracks, or if it's done not cheap, but if it's not done well, 100% perfect by the blacksmith, if it hits another sword, it cracks instantly.
Absolutely.
And I think this is why the steady, harsh, if you could say harsh, but the hard way, the steady, hard way is way better than just easy and flowing and just like not caring about anything and just living my life the way I want.
No. But I want to mention something else.
Yes.
About forgiveness. You asked me in the beginning or before, why should we forgive if it's not psychological, spiritual?
Yeah.
And then I went too deep into the conversation. The thing is, I want to talk about my personal experience about that. After the pain I went through and I forced myself to go into that environment, after my ego has been shattered, psychologically speaking, what happens is the opposite. You want to show your ego in any way. How? You know, I think that's something very common now, and especially in capitalism world we're living in. And it's the idea of you have to prove yourself. You are this, you are that. All this showy, I call it on social media type of content.
The guru lifestyle.
Yeah, the motivation and how you should transform your pain into anger. I went there. And here's the thing. At first, you think that if you transform your pain into anger and anger into motivation, and motivation you get successful and you get back, and you don't take revenge, but your own revenge is being the best version of yourself. I went there for a moment of my life and it worked. Amazing. I built everything I want to do. I got the best grades. I went this, I did that. I was waking up extremely early. I was productive. Here's the thing. Suddenly you wake up, you look in the mirror, you feel so empty. Why? Because you feel like your childhood, your inner childhood, your innocence is being completely shattered. You don't feel you. You feel like your eyes, same eyes, just closed. You're not happy.
Right?
You don't feel happy. You feel so empty. Anger, hatred. And then you're like, you're not able to connect with God. And then I went to that was, okay, why do I feel that way? I mean, I was supposed to do all that in order to avoid the pain, to be extremely productive, to do all that and to not feel pain, right? I still felt it. The problem is I just felt in a different way with emptiness when you just disconnected from everything, right? So the problem with that is that anger and hatred and unforgiveness, which is sometimes resentment, destroys your heart from the bottom, like inside out. It destroys your heart. It's like poison. Anger and resentment and unforgiveness, it is poison that you drink. It makes you no longer you. It disconnects you from God. It makes your ego higher. And when your ego are higher, you don't see God. You're just completely disconnected from God. Like, I remember that period of my life, I was not being tempted with the normal sins I was being tempted on. I was very surprised. I was like, there's no temptation. But then I was like, wait a second. I'm not being tempted because I don't need to be tempted. God, like the devil has me in his hand. He's like, I already have everything she wants. Anger, hatred, ego. Okay, why should I tempt her? She doesn't need to. She's already extremely productive, working on herself 24/7 and forgetting God. Why should I tempt her? No longer need.
There's this
You know what I mean?
I can't remember who it was. He, I think it was, I can't remember. I think it's Denzel Washington.
Okay.
And he was saying, if you wake up in the morning and you're not tempted by the devil,
You're not
you need to check your life because you are doing something wrong. But if you're tempted by the devil and you're always being tempted, you know you're doing something right.
Absolutely.
And this is where, and this is why forgiveness is hard, and this is why you're going through all this. You're going through all these emotions and all this journey. It's a journey that we're going through. And there's a lot of struggles that we're going to tackle. But if we start with understanding that it's okay, we're all in this at the same time together. And that even though that you did something wrong to me or I did something wrong to you, it's okay. It's going to go around and someone is also going to forgive me because I did something wrong to them.
Absolutely.
And it's okay if you have one up on me, if you could say that. Like, you did something wrong and I'm going to forgive you. It's as if you have something on me, but it's going to be repaid because God is like this. It's just. He is just. He's going to give you the opportunity to learn.
Yes.
But as much as you forgive, the other also will forgive you as he will forgive you on what you're going to do to them.
Absolutely.
And this is what something, and I think this is the people that I've seen the most are able to forgive are people without ego. Their ego is checked and cracked, and they're like, it's not even
a priority
in their life.
They don't get triggered. They have a strong sense of self, and especially in God, not in people or external factors. They're not being triggered,
and they understand that I am being forgiven all the time. I need to forgive, and that this is my job is to forgive. As much as he got spat on, he was hit, he was insulted, and he also forgave them regardless of what they did, of what they did not do. He just forgave because he is love, and that's a huge topic, which is love in itself. I asked you also because our guests always do homework before they come, some tips and tricks, like something that if I'm stuck in this pattern, this vicious pattern,
behavior pattern of,
how can I, if you had one tip to give, how can I get out or even easily forgive?
I don't think there is one step. There is a multitude of steps.
Yes.
Okay. First, if we go very deep, right? Let's take point by point. We said to understand. How do you understand? Because that's not easy. How to understand? I mean, your only reason you don't understand is because you are not that thing. If you don't understand narcissism or a person who is narcissistic, it's because you are not a narcissistic. You cannot understand outside of yourself, right? So now, how do you understand? Throughout these experiences, and even as a child, I think I've built those ideologies. There's, from my perspective, 4 type of people when they get hurt. Okay, 4.
4.
And each one of them had different strengths and weaknesses. The first one, these type of people, when they get hurt, they are the type of victim, right? They get hurt, they take that, they play the story over and over and over again.
And they get stuck.
Sometimes it's a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes just a story that you tell yourself to get that dopamine, or feeling great that you are feeling that pain and feeling pity for yourself, especially if other people didn't acknowledge that pain, right? When people don't acknowledge your pain, that's when you get in that coping type of thinking, right?
Yes, it's like no one is understanding the depthness of pain that I am going through.
In fact, Fyodor Dostoevsky, which is an author and a psychologist in 1800, talks a lot about that in his books. Human mind, we are sometimes obsessed with suffering. Sometimes. So you repeat that idea over and over again. And those type of people are the one who ends up in PTSD and anxiety, depression, multitude of stuff. Because they're playing the victim, right? They're type of people who fall and they still fall. They don't get up.
Yes.
That's the first one.
Okay.
Most people think that's the weakest. They're not the weakest.
Okay.
The second one is the weakest. Which one is second? This type of people are the perfect example of hurt people. They are the type of people who are hurt, so hurt that they're only projecting as a way to understand their own pain, but also as a way to, to deal with that. So usually most people will get hurt from the second type. And these type of people are the one who need to revenge in order to forgive. They're the type of people who need to stab or to feel like, okay, well, I've done, now I can forgive you, right? That's the weakest, because those are people who represent the perfect example. I will hurt you because I'm hurt, right? These, from my perspective, are the weakest. They become the bully. They become the angry boss, or the one who's criticizing. Each one of these people are really people you should feel like a lot of empathy for, because these people are really hurt from the inside out. Okay? That's for me the second type. The third type, which I talked about, and for my entire life I thought this one was the strongest type. It's the type who gets in pain, however they get up. They transform their pain into anger, as I said, and they go into this completely, self-improvement. I will improve myself. I'll be the best version of myself. I'll kill my feelings. I will not feel anything. I will not get attached. This type of mentality, right? And as I said, I thought it was the strongest. However, they're strong because they don't revenge, and they don't do anything wrong. They don't attack people. However, you feel empty and disconnect from God. Until I came to the fourth part, the fourth person that I find the strongest. That's the ultimate that every Christian should try to reach out. It's a type who gets hurt. They get up. They don't hold resentment, neither anger. They learn from their experiences. They learn that everyone that comes to your life, it's either a blessing or a lesson.
Yes,
right?
I've heard it a lot.
Yes.
And it's true, because there's a lot of people that they were there for a short time or a specific time, and you were there and I learned this from you.
Perfect. And you
thank you for the lesson, and thank you for being in the life.
Yes.
And then you let go of them.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it's not a bad feeling. It's just like you're both going into different ways. I love that you've put them in 4 simple categories. So for you to at least
to understand,
for anyone to be like, I understand that you're there. It's okay.
Yes,
you're there, as much as weak or not.
We all become the 4. From my perspective, we all become the 4.
We've been in all 4. Yes, I've been in all 4, because you're trying to channel that pain somehow, and you don't know how. I know that you're a big reader, so I also want you to give maybe a few books that, for those, like you said, that want to understand more about the pain, the trauma, forgiveness. If you have any book, that would you would suggest, give me like 2, 3, maybe one minimum.
No, it's okay. First, I think one of the really good books are Gift of Imperfection. It gives you a really good insight about who you are, and how sometimes, if most people, I think they're perfectionist, it gives you a sense of why that perfectionist comes from and how to deal with that. Another
It talks to me because I used to be very perfect.
Yes.
I couldn't finish a project without being perfect. Like every single pixel of that post needs
Has
to
to
be
be perfect.
perfect.
Yes.
And then you're like,
it's
nah,
a self-sabotage behavior and not an improvement way. Unlike society says.
it is not. It helps me not.
Absolutely.
I would have that project in my hands for months sometimes.
Yes.
So what other? What's the author in, by the way, from the first book?
I don't remember the authors though.
Okay, we'll check it and we'll put it in the links.
Sure. Another book that I find really interesting is the book of trauma. I think family trauma, something like that. I don't really remember the name exactly. I could check it up. But this book gives you a really good insight on family trauma. You know, sometimes you get mad from your family members,
A lot.
from not receiving the love you need, that you perceive that you need.
Yes.
Pain, you understand your parents, you understand your family, and you understand everyone around you, especially family, because it gives you an insight on physiologically speaking and psychologically speaking on, for example, you have innate trauma, because I think everyone has those innate traumas that without any experiences, you just have it. These are coming from family. So you need to check it up and see. And sometimes it gives you insight on how to understand your parents. You know, another book that I like is relationship, but I think it's very interesting. Everyone should read it too. It's called Men from Mars, Women from Venus. It is not about trauma. However, I think it's a very common one, but it's so interesting. It gives you such insight on men and women and their differences, especially in relationships, their needs, their love, how they give love, because it's not because you give love, that means the other person felt love.
Yes,
so
yes.
It gives you insight on that. It also gives you insight on different communication skills. So, you know.
I think I should be reading that book.
No, that
No, for the amount of trauma I just brought up today, let me read that book for the next time.
It's okay.
Okay. Any last pointers you would love to give us? Any last, maybe
forgiveness,
a trick or a tip that we would like to leave the audience, our viewers with, that maybe, you know, because the goal, again, we
change perspective.
We like, one thing that I read a lot, and you know, there's a lot of studies, and I went through a lot of case studies about actually forgiveness or traumas, and the first thing that says about how to heal from that is to talk.
Not always.
Not always. That's true. Some don't. There's a lot of
depends on people.
Yes, there's a lot of now case studies that says talking and not talking could be as beneficial.
Yes, because it depends on people.
But for those that wanted to talk, a lot of the comments that comes in is, and a lot of the conclusion of those case studies is that because of the lack of opportunities to talk, they feel like they put a negative thought of who they are as a person, and it just fester in this. And I think that as a community, as we are Christian, I think our homes, our churches, our community should be an open space for people to talk. For those that want to talk, that we have people ready to hear them, to be empathetic, to understand that, and to read at least some books so that they understand what they're talking about. But at least from the experience, you know, you're 16, I'm 28, doesn't matter, right? We've went through traumas that will affect us
for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. But we will still, you know, continue. And we're going to go through some more, and we're going to grow and evolve and be the better version, like you said. And I love that. I want to be the better version of myself.
Absolutely.
I need to go through pain.
That's the only way. You cannot avoid pain. But I want to say something of forgiveness. Please don't expect people to come and say, I'm sorry, because they won't acknowledge it. And you cannot come and expect people to hurt you. Like they acknowledge they hurt you, because most people, they will do what they did. They won't even remember it in 2 days. And you will remember for the next 5 years, right?
Yes.
Here's the thing. That's a pure you and God game. You have to go and accept the fact and do all the healing inside of you. Use it as a good opportunities and choose what type of people you are from the 4 type of people I said when coming to pain.
Yes.
That's what determine who you are. Because I think humans are determined by two things. Your attitude and who you are, and how much you're willing to do when you have everything. Your ego especially. And what's your faith and your ability to deal with pain when you lose everything?
Wow.
So when you lose everything, that means from pain, sometimes that's a breaking time. Know that it's usually in those breaking times that everything in your life will start to change to the better. Like it's the time you get in your room, just like, I cannot get up. I'm so tired. I'm
Yes,
done.
yes.
I'm done with people. I'm done with this. I don't want to
Yes.
deal with that feeling again. That's when God enters. He's like, no, that's was your purpose. Here you
Yes,
go.
this is
Enter
the
the game. Your purpose was the things that you never received, and usually your love language in the future will be the things you never had. Fun fact, psychologically speaking. So
very
everything
true.
that, even your
Very
biggest
true.
fear, that was gonna be a change, because I experienced my biggest fear, and after God made you go through that, I knew that my whole life was based on that. Like my biggest fear was
It's
that's
very
purpose.
true.
So, depends on people.
It's very true. Thank you so much, Joy, for all the amazing insights.
You're welcome.
I am astonished for 16 years. By the way, in your shoes, I wasn't even ready to go through all this and understand this. So God bless the path that you're in, your mind. Really, God bless you. For everyone that was with us, thank you for listening the podcast. Don't forget, guys, let go. Understand your pain is okay. Take your time to understand your pain. Let go of the expectation that other people will come and do what you want. Do it for yourself. And then just go talk to God and create that conversation where we don't matter. Like the other people will never matter. Just have that conversation between you and God. And this is how you're going to feel better. You're going to forget. You're going to actually forget those bad moments. And then from there, you're going to just be at peace and enjoy your life every single day of your life. Thank you again, and see you on the next episode.